Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought it would be fun to talk through my first 6 books of 2026. These are some of the books that have got me inspired into reading this year, and I thought it would be fun to share with you. I actually just got off a pretty bad reading slump, to be honest. I feel like I hadn't really read in 3 months, and I don't know what happened this year, but these books just got me out of it and I really enjoyed them. So let's review them. First thing was Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. Ashley Poston is one of my favorite authors. Her book, The 7-Year Slip, is one of my favorite books of all time. So I knew I would enjoy this. The story follows Joni, who is following her dreams out in Los Angeles, but had to leave everything behind to do so. She goes back home for a little trip and to kind of clear her mind, get her creative juices flowing, and ends up with a male's voice in her head, and they can communicate as if they're in each other's brains. She also gets presented with a bit of a business opportunity out there. So she's tasked with work, figuring out family stuff, figuring out where she fits with the world, as well as figuring out who's in her head. I thought it was a really lovely story. I love that it touched on a lot of different themes, especially themes that I think a lot of women and people in their late 20s, early 30s go through. I thought it was really lovely, and I would probably read it again. I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars, so pretty high for me. The next book I read is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I have seen this all over BookTok, all over the internet and everywhere, and I picked it up at my local library. I was especially interested because I saw that Lily Reinhart from Riverdale is going to be acting in this, and I love her films, and I did like Riverdale in the first season. This book follows Olive and Dr. Carlson, who kind of work alongside one another at this university's lab. She's a student, he's a professor, but they're not directly working with one another. She mistakenly kisses him while she's drunk one night in a hallway without knowing who he is, and then develops this plan to pretend to be fake dating him for another reason the book tells you. This book was really fun. The fake dating trope is personally one of my favorites, and I thought it was really fun. I loved the dynamic between Olive and Adam. I thought Olive with her friends was lovely. I thought it was really interesting to read more from a science perspective. I'm not a science person, but hopefully that was all accurate. It sounded accurate to me. There's a lot of big words. But it was a really nice story, and it was a really good one, especially to help me get out of a slump, because I could fly through it really quickly and it kept me engaged without having to really dedicate too much time to reading. So I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I really am excited for this movie to come out. I do think Lily Reinhart will play a really good Olive. The next book I read was a little bit different. It was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. It's kind of a thriller-ish book is how I would describe it. This book follows Sydney, who has always lived in the same neighborhood of New York, and it was traditionally a black neighborhood, at least that's how she grew up in it. And she's noticed recently that a lot of white people have started moving in. So the book follows her finding out more of her history and starting to put together a bit of a town tour so people can understand the real history of the town, not just the whitewashed history. But as she's doing that, there was a lot of discrepancies and interesting things that have happened that she wasn't really expecting, and that you wouldn't really expect from a town. It covers a lot of black history, which I actually didn't know and I found really interesting to learn, especially black history in America. It covered some topics such as white guilt, because the male main character, Theo, is white but wants to help out on this tour. This book, I would say, is over dramatized, but some of the characters in here were shocking, but I do believe some of those characters probably would exist. Not to this level, but it was a really interesting read, and I stayed up till 2 AM finishing this book. I gave this one a 4.25. I don't know that I would read it again, because I feel like once you learn the twist ending, actually it would be interesting to read again, because once you've learned the twist ending, you can go back and pick up on all the signs, which was interesting. It was one of those books where I feel like anytime a small action happened or there was something that was slightly amiss, you had to go back and read sentences to kind of see if you picked it up, and I would be interested to read it again now that I know the ending. My 4th book of January was The Fiancé Dilemma by Elena Armas. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This book follows Josie and Matthew. Josie is the mayor slash cafe owner slash everything of a small town. It is the second book in a series, which I didn't know until like halfway through, so I'm going to go back and read the first one eventually. But she is just lovely and kind of stumbling her way through life, and has just found out that her father is a famous millionaire. So she's been sent a PR coach because he's kind of going through a bit of a PR crisis at the moment. Josie then pretends to be engaged to Matthew, who's the best friend of her new sister's partner, which is kind of all explained in book 1 from my understanding, but I started at book 2 accidentally. The interesting thing about Josie is that Josie has been engaged 4 times. So the book kind of talks through Josie and Matthew in this fake engagement for PR, talking through, you know, why she is the way she is and how their relationship and their friendship is blossoming and blooming and developing, alongside all the critique of herself and her history as part of her father's PR crisis. This was exactly as cheesy as I needed it to be. I really enjoyed reading it. I loved Matthew. He was a really good book boyfriend. I just needed a cheesy read, and that's what I got, and I couldn't be more thankful for that. It was 4 stars for me, and I would probably read it again, and I am going to go back and read the first book in this series. I finally did it. I read A Court of Thorn and Roses. This has been on my TBR for genuinely years, and I kept putting it off. Everyone had told me that the first book was average at best, the second book was incredible, but I didn't have it in me to get through the first book. My partner and I were tandem reading it, and I had some time to kill, so I read it. It was good. I'm still new to the fantasy genre. My first fantasy books really were, I mean, I read Harry Potter and Hunger Games as a kid, but my first fantasy books really were Fourth Wing, which I read last year. So coming up to Fourth Wing, I didn't enjoy this book as much as Fourth Wing. My review on Fable was the first 75%, nothing really happened. It was a lot of world building, and obviously I haven't read the rest of the series yet, so I'm assuming some of that is important as we go. But then I got to the last 25% of the book, which was much more fantasy than I was expecting. It was a lot more talk of like a dystopian world. It was just a lot more action-packed, and it was a lot more entertaining, and I feel like they could have spent heaps more time on those last 25%. If you've read the book, you will know what I'm talking about. I thought it was a good book. I think everyone has told me that this one pales in comparison to the next few, so I think I only gave this a 3-star. Let me check. I gave it a 4.25. Which is more than I thought, to be honest. I might change that. I thought it was a good fantasy book. It took me, I think, only 2 days to read, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. Yeah, there was just a lot of, I call it faff in the beginning, like just a lot of words but nothing really happened, and hopefully it all comes back to mean something one day, but I'm not sure. But I am excited to read book number 2. And then my last book, which I finished just this morning, is Happy Place by Emily Henry. Emily Henry is just my favorite author of the moment. She doesn't have a book of hers that I have disliked. They've all been 5 stars. This one was just the same. Happy Place. I just loved them. I have never related to a character more than I relate to Harriet, who's the main female character. She's so beautifully kind and soft and not willing to take up space in this world, to the detriment of herself and her relationships, and I think it was really cathartic and therapeutic for me to see that play out against everything that's going on in her life. Harriet and Wynne were fiancés, and they were part of a group of 6 soulmate type best friends. They go away to the cottage for one last weekend and are forced to share a room together and pretend like they are still together because they haven't told any of their friends about the breakup. It was really a sweet book. I completely, like I said, I just relate to Harriet so much, and I feel like this is a book I'll read every year, so I need to buy myself a copy. This was an obvious 5-star. It might even be a 6-star, to be honest. I just loved it. I finished it this morning. I didn't want to put it down, and I just hold her books in such a special place in my heart. Those are the 6 first books I've read in 2026. I can't wait to keep reading. I'm actually starting on a new series now, which I will make a video about soon. And yeah, I'm really glad that I got over my reading hump and I'm able to enjoy books again, because I love them. And yeah, I will share some more with you soon. All right, happy reading. I love you, and have a very good day.